Welcome to Gear, and in today's Gear we're going to cover ND filters and polarizers for drone cameras. And we're going to start with ND filters. What are they good for? When do we use them? When is it appropriate? And then we get to the polarizers. So, Micah, ND filters. What does ND mean?
ND stands for neutral density.
Neutral density? All right. What does that do?
So what that does is it reduces the amount of light that comes in without changing the color.
Okay. Yep. So it's a filter that reduces the amount of light coming into the camera without changing any qualities of the. It's neutral to the light that's passing through. All right. Are all ND filters neutral?
No, they're not.
No, they're not. There is a big difference between. So obviously, just like with everything else, there are the cheaper ones out there that you can get for a couple dollars. But you kind of, just like with everything else, you get what you paid for.
Yes, you do.
And not that the most expensive ND filters are necessarily the best. When I was looking for ND filters for the GH4 and then the X5, I bought like 5 different ones. Then I settled on one. And I actually did. I'll try to dig it up and see if I can put it in the show notes. I put a picture, a side-by-side comparison, the same scene with the different ND filters, and it was shocking how different that was, how much cast, how much different tint some of these filters actually introduced to the image.
Didn't one of them actually color it purple?
Yeah, purple. Then one of them was a little hot. One of them gave it a green tint. It was mind-boggling. And it was deep purple. It was like crazy purple. It was pretty unbelievable for something that was labeled ND filter. There was one of the cheaper ones, so I did it to experiment a bit to find one that I can stick with that works the best for me. And I actually settled on the Hoya. For the Micro Four Thirds. And even Hoya actually warms things up just a little. But out of all the ND filters that I had my hands on and tried on these cameras, that's by far the best one that I found for the X5 or for the Micro Four Thirds format.
I agree.
The beauty of it is too, because the lenses on these run from f1.7, f1.8, f2 all the way to f22. So you only need one. I just got the ND8, and that gets me where I need pretty much from anywhere. So you don't need the whole set. Like you would need with some of the cameras that have a fixed aperture that's fully open, like Mavics, the Phantoms, not the Pro, you can close down the aperture, but still there is some use for the ND filters there. The idea is to reduce the amount of light coming in. Why would you want to reduce the amount of light coming into the camera?
So that you can get the correct shutter speed for your video.
For the video. So would you use ND filters for stills?
No.
Why not?
Well, because you're doing essentially the same thing with the shutter speed when you're taking a still.
Yeah.
You're reducing the amount of light coming in, so why would you want to have something restricting?
Well, if I want things to blur out, like if I'm shooting water or the usual waterfall effect, or if you're shooting surfers on the waves in the daytime in a bright day, I can see you can throw in, if you have like an ND64, and you can get your shutter speed down to like a quarter second or something, and then the waves literally turn into these veils. So you can. It's actually cool for both photography and video. So you use it, but you're right, you use it to slow down your shutter speed. And for photography, you can use it to get these nice effects on fast-moving surfaces, or you can. Sometimes I use ND filter when I shoot time lapses on ground. If you have people walking around, so let's say commercial real estate shoots a lot, they want to have a shot of the front of the building or the hall, but you don't necessarily want to be showing the faces of the people. So I'll throw in an ND filter and get the shutter speed down to, not even a quarter of a second, but something really slow, so it smudges the people out. So now on the time lapse, they show up as these ghosts flying really quickly through, and it gives it a cool effect. So it's cool for photography too. For video, where it's important is to get the shutter speed to the sweet spot, as we call it, the 180-degree rule, which is about double your frame rate. And while you can do it on most of the cameras that you have control of the aperture, you can just do it by adjusting the aperture appropriately, unless it's like a really bright day or really bright environment. For some of the cameras where you don't have the aperture control, that's the only way to get the shutter speed where you need it. So you literally have to have a collection of ND filters. And again, this is the older Phantom versions, the Phantom 4, the Mavic series. I don't know, do they have ND filters for Spark?
I believe they do.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Are they like stickers?
That would actually be a cool way to do that.
Yeah, I know. A single-use ND filter.
All over it, though.
Yeah, but anyway, so
anyway.
that's why for those cameras, you're better off, unlike for something that you can control the aperture with, you're better off buying a whole set so you can use it in different situations.
I would at least get the 4 and the 8.
Yeah.
Those are the most commonly used.
Yeah, 2 has some use, sunsets, sunrises, a lot, but 4 and 8 on a really bright day. Then like the 16, the 32 are super bright days, or that's already when stuff starts smudging out. I've only used 32 if I need it, like the waves to be a little
really
bit softer.
Bright, snowy day.
Yeah. Also, I could imagine one more with the time lapses. That's how you can actually get people completely out of your shots if you just run the shutter speed long enough, and I'm talking seconds, then they completely disappear out of your shot. So if you're shooting like a square or, a street that's busy and you don't want that many, it's say touristy, and you don't want that many people around, this is the way these shots are done.
That's a good idea.
So if you ever wonder, like the I forgot what that famous fountain in Rome is called, and there's always tourists. That thing is, so how do you get a day shot of that without any people there? That's how. But back to the video. And why would you want to get your shutter speed to double your frame rate?
Oh, I don't know the technical explanation for that.
Motion blur.
Yeah. I know that's a factor, but
So what you wanna introduce a little motion blur. So what happens is easy, right? So let's say you're shooting at 30 frames per second, right? So you would be setting your shutter speed around 60th. It doesn't have to be dead on. If it's 80th, you're fine. If it's 50th, it's fine. Just don't prioritize over your exposure. But it introduces just the right amount of motion blur, so the video actually looks smooth.
Right.
Anything lower than that, if you set up the shutter speed too high, which is what happens usually with the cameras that have fixed apertures, you are running the shutter speed at, maybe 200th, 300th of a second. So now it's pretty much a still shot. It's a freeze frame, right? But it's still trying to fill the 30 sections of a second with that still. So that's how the video gets really jittery, because it's really a series of still. You can see the changes. That's how you get the jitter. It's very unnatural.
Get that a lot with 24 frames.
24 frames drags out a little bit. That's a little too much of a motion blur sometimes. To me, I'm a big fan of 24 frames in regular cinematography, but not necessarily in drone video, because it made sense when, in the times when film was expensive and limited, and they needed to find the least amount of frames they could get away with. And the camera was mostly stationary or moving very little. But now, if you can fling the camera around it fast, I'm not sure that the 24 frame per second look is really the best. I like the 30. Obviously, it's up, if you're shooting for somebody, they get to choose what they want to shoot in. But if that's something that I'm editing, I'm 30, 60 sometimes. If I want like super crisp, super smooth videos, the motion blur part works for every frame rate. So if you're using 24, 50th shutter speed, 150th, that's what you're shooting for. 30 frames per second, you're shooting for a 60th shutter speed, and the ND filters is what gets you there. Cool. What about polarizers? Those are really interesting. So what do polarizers do? Do you remember?
I kind of remember.
Let's see, Mr. Expert.
So it removes glare off of non-metallic objects.
Yeah.
Number one.
Yeah.
And it helps, and also the light that reflects off of haze and fog helps to.
Yeah.
I don't know.
So
help me out here.
It's clear. So polarized light is a light reflective of surfaces, and what it does, it comes into your camera at a little bit different wavelength. And what the polarizer filter does, it filters out different wavelengths, so you lose the glare in surfaces. And why would you want to lose the glare? Water. I can think of, so you can see through the water, surface glass. Trees, if you're shooting a building, leaves. Or if you're spying on your neighbor. No, I'm joking. Don't spy on your neighbors. But you want as little or if you're shooting a car, you're following a car, take some reflection out. You can see who's inside, who's driving it.
Also, a golf course that's just been sprayed with water.
Yeah. Also, leaves reflect a lot. So if you say have a real estate shoot, and especially if it's something we're in New England here, so that all there is trees, and the house, it's usually a hole in between all the trees. Right. And if you have a lot of light reflecting off the leaves, the tops of the leaves, then it gives you a problem with contrast, and it gives you a problem with the color, with the saturation in the trees. And the polarizer filter helps with that. Now, the cool thing about the circular polarizer filter, and those, if you guys maybe bought a set of ND filters, like a Polar Pro kit for the Phantom or for the Mavic, and you wonder why your polarized filters, why you can spin them around the crown, you can actually, by turning the filter, you choose the amount of polarization that the filter does for you, so you can actually fine tune how much reflection you want or don't want in your shot. So that's what that does. And what it also does, it's again, light reflects off pollution in the air. So we're coming into the pollen season now, it's getting humid, it's getting muggy, all that gives you this hazy look to everything pretty much any summer day, especially where we are. And you can take care of a lot of that with the right polarizer, actually, if you tune it in. So that's what the polarizers do. Very simple. Very well, Micah. You passed the test. You may call yourself a drone photographer now.
Yay.
Yay. Awesome. You guys, if you have any questions, you can leave them in comments under the video if you're watching this on YouTube, or you can head over to our blog and leave it right there. And we will be right back for some cool behind the scenes after this.